The year was 2387, and space near the Kepler 442 system had never felt more dangerous. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the large viewport with his arms crossed behind his back. His ship was one of 50 vessels that made up the human defense fleet, and right now those 50 ships were all that stood between humanity and total destruction. Jake was 42 years old with short brown hair that was starting to gray at the temples, and he had the kind of face that showed every battle he had ever fought. His crew respected him not because he was strict, but because he always brought them home alive. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft beeping of consoles and the hum of the ship's engines. Commander Alex Turner sat at the tactical station running diagnostics on the weapon systems for the third time that hour. Lieutenant Nina Rodriguez monitored communications with her headset pressed against one ear, listening for any signal from the approaching enemy fleet. Chief Engineer Pete Collins had come up from the engine room to stand near the captain, because he wanted to see what was coming with his own eyes. None of them spoke because there was nothing left to say. They all knew what the scans were showing them, and none of it was good. The communication console beeped, and Nina looked up with wide eyes. She pressed a button and said the words everyone had been dreading. "Admiral Lisa Carter wants to speak with you, sir." Jake nodded and walked to the center of the bridge where a holographic projector showed the face of his superior officer. Lisa was 50 years old and had been fighting in space longer than most of her crew had been alive. Her expression was grim, and Jake knew immediately that the news was worse than they thought. "Captain Morrison, the situation has changed." Lisa's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. "The Zephyrian Empire has issued an official ultimatum. They want us to surrender every human colony in the Outer Rim within 48 hours, or they will destroy them all." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. "How many ships are we looking at, Admiral?" Lisa's hologram flickered slightly as she pulled up a tactical display. "Intelligence reports 300 warships carrying just over 1 million soldiers. They are led by General Vexathera, who has conquered 17 other species using the same tactics. Overwhelming force and no mercy." Jake looked at the numbers floating in the holographic display and did the math in his head. 50 human ships against 300 alien vessels, 30,000 human personnel against 1 million enemy soldiers. The odds were not just bad, they were impossible. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Lisa met his eyes through the hologram, and Jake saw something there he had never seen before. Doubt. "You are ordered to defend the outer colonies by any means necessary. The rest of the fleet will support you, but Captain, we both know there are not enough ships in the entire Terran Defense Force to match their numbers." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we will have to be smarter than them." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "That is why I sent you Morrison. Good luck." The hologram vanished, leaving Jake standing alone in the center of his bridge. Alex spoke up from the tactical station. "Captain, the Zephyrian fleet just entered scanner range. They will be here in 6 hours." Jake turned to look at his tactical officer. "Show me everything we know about them." The main view screen changed to display images and data files on the Zephyrian Empire. Jake studied the information carefully while his crew watched in silence. The aliens were massive creatures standing 8 feet tall with 4 arms and bodies covered in natural armor plating that looked like dark blue chitin. Their faces were angular with large black eyes and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. They looked like nightmare versions of insects mixed with warriors from ancient Earth legends. More importantly, Jake studied their tactics. The Zephyrians always attacked in massive formations using their superior numbers to overwhelm enemy defenses. They had energy weapons that could cut through most shields, and their ships were heavily armored. Every species they had conquered had tried to fight them head-on, and every species had lost. Jake smiled slightly because he had no intention of fighting them the way they expected. "Nina, what do we know about their psychology?" Nina pulled up her files and read from her screen. "According to the xenobiology reports, they value honor and direct combat above everything else. They view tactics like ambushes and retreats as cowardly. Their entire culture is built around the idea that the strongest warrior wins." Pete crossed his arms and grunted. "So they are predictable." Jake nodded. "Exactly. They have never faced an enemy that refused to play by their rules." Alex looked confused. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down. He pressed a button that opened a channel to all 50 ships in the human fleet. "This is Captain Morrison to all vessels. Scatter Formation Protocol 7. Use the asteroids and planetary rings as cover. Do not engage the enemy in open space under any circumstances. We are going to make them chase us. Several captains responded with acknowledgments, but one voice stood out. Captain Beth Williams of the USS Ranger sounded worried. Captain Morrison, they outnumber us 20-1. If we scatter, they could pick us off one by one. Jake understood her concern, but he also knew she was thinking like every other species the Zephyrians had fought. Captain Williams, that is exactly what they will expect us to do, which is why we are going to do the opposite. Trust me. There was a pause, and then Beth responded with more confidence. Understood, sir. Ranger will take position in the northern asteroid field. The hours passed slowly as the human fleet moved into position. Each ship found hiding spots among the rocks and ice of the system, using the natural cover to disappear from enemy sensors. The USS Defiance positioned itself behind a large moon where the metallic core would mask their energy signature. Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships began to appear at the edge of the system. There were so many dots that they almost covered the entire screen. Nina looked back at the captain with fear in her eyes, but Jake just smiled. The communication system crackled to life with a new voice. It was deep and harsh with a clicking sound underneath each word. This was the voice of General Vexithara. Humans of the Terran systems, I am General Vexithara of the Zephyrian Empire. I command 1 million of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Your ships are few and your weapons are weak. Surrender now and we will grant you the mercy of servitude. Resist and we will erase every trace of your species from the stars. You have 1 hour to respond. The bridge was silent as everyone waited for their captain to speak. Jake stood up from his chair and walked to the communication console. He nodded at Nina, who opened a channel back to the Zephyrian fleet. General, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. I appreciate you taking the time to count your soldiers. That must have taken a while. There was a pause, and Jake could almost feel the confusion from the alien commander. The general's voice came back angrier than before. You dare mock me, human. I have conquered 17 worlds. What makes you think your pathetic fleet can stand against my might? Jake's smile grew wider, and his crew began to understand what he was doing. Well, General, I have been looking at your numbers, and I think you made a tactical error. Vexithara's voice became a roar. What error? Explain yourself before I destroy you. Jake leaned closer to the microphone and spoke calmly. You did not bring 1 million soldiers, General. You brought me 1 million targets. The communication channel went dead, and Jake could imagine the alien commander's rage. Alex started laughing first, and then Pete joined in, and soon the entire bridge crew was grinning. Nina looked at her captain with admiration. Sir, do you think that made him angry? Jake sat back down in his command chair and watched as the red dots on the tactical display began moving toward their position. He was pretty sure it did. Now let us show these aliens what happens when you pick a fight with humans. All stations battle ready. Activate the EMP mines and prepare for guerrilla protocol. This is going to be a long fight, but we are going to win it one target at a time. The crew responded with enthusiasm, moving to their stations with renewed energy. The Zephyrian fleet was coming, and they expected an easy victory against a weaker enemy. What they did not know was that humans had spent millions of years learning how to hunt prey that was bigger and stronger than themselves. The aliens were about to learn a very painful lesson about underestimating humanity. The Zephyrian fleet moved into the Kepler 442 system like a swarm of angry insects, and their formation was exactly what Jake had predicted. 300 warships arranged in tight geometric patterns that looked impressive, but left little room for individual maneuvering. General Vexithara was following the same playbook he had used to conquer 17 other species, and Jake was counting on that. The human captain stood on his bridge watching the tactical display as the red dots spread across the screen like a disease. Alex was running calculations at his station, and the numbers he was seeing made him shake his head in disbelief. Captain, their flagship alone is 3 times the size of the Defiance, and those cruisers they have could take out one of our destroyers with a single volley. Jake nodded but did not look worried. That would matter if we were going to fight them ship to ship, but we are not. Alex looked confused, so Jake explained. The Zephyrians have better shields and bigger guns, but their ships are slow, and they only know how to fight one way. We are going to teach them that there are other ways to win a battle. Nina spoke up from her station. Sir, I am picking up more transmissions from their fleet. They are organizing search patterns to find our ships. Jake smiled. Let them search. Pete, can you confirm all the EMP mines are active? The chief engineer checked his console and gave a thumbs up. All 2,000 mines are deployed and showing green on my board. They look like regular space debris on Zephyrian scanners. The second one of their ships gets within 50 meters, the mine will detonate and fry every electronic system they have. Jake was pleased because the EMP mines were humanity's secret weapon. During Earth's nuclear age, humans had learned how to create electromagnetic pulses that could disable electronics, and while most modern ships had some shielding against energy weapons, nobody had thought to shield against EMPs in centuries. The Zephyrians had never encountered this kind of weapon before, and that was going to cost them dearly. Lieutenant Commander Sam Brooks entered the bridge carrying a data tablet filled with intelligence reports. Jake had requested a full briefing on human advantages, and Sam had spent the last 3 hours compiling everything he could find. "Captain, I have the analysis you wanted." Jake gestured for him to continue. Sam tapped his tablet and began explaining. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. We did not have claws or fangs or armor like other predators. What we had was endurance and the ability to adapt. We could chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We could change our tactics on the fly and learn from our mistakes. The Zephyrians are the opposite. They evolved as ambush predators on a high-gravity world. They are incredibly strong, but they tire quickly, and their culture values tradition over innovation. Jake listened carefully because this was exactly the kind of information he needed. "What else?" Sam continued. "Our ships are smaller and use less fuel, which means we can operate for weeks without resupply. Zephyrian ships are fuel-hungry, and their crews need to rest every few days because of their high metabolism. Also, their rigid military hierarchy means lower-ranking officers never question orders, even when those orders don't make sense." Jake felt the pieces of his strategy coming together. "So if we can keep them moving and chasing us for long enough, they will exhaust themselves." Sam nodded. "Exactly. We just need to survive long enough for that to happen." Dr. Helen Park entered the bridge next, and she was the fleet's xenobiologist who had studied Zephyrian culture for years. "Captain, I heard you wanted to know about their psychology." Jake turned to face her. "Tell me everything." Helen pulled up holographic images of Zephyrian society. Their entire civilization is built around the concept of honorable combat. They believe that true warriors face their enemies directly, and that using cover or tactical retreats is shameful. When they conquered other species, those species always tried to match their military strength head-on. Nobody has ever used guerrilla tactics against them, because the Zephyrians would consider it beneath them to even prepare for such tactics. Jake's mind was racing with possibilities. "So they have a cultural blind spot." Helen nodded enthusiastically. "A massive one. In all my research, I have never found a single instance of them adapting to unconventional warfare. They would rather die honorably than fight dishonorably." Jake turned back to his crew. "Then we are going to fight so dishonorably that they won't know what hit them." Alex laughed, and even Nina cracked a smile. The mood on the bridge was shifting from fear to confidence because their captain had a plan, and Jake Morrison's plans usually worked. The tactical display showed the Zephyrian fleet beginning to spread out across the system. They were searching for the human ships and growing frustrated at finding nothing. Jake opened a channel to the other human vessels. "All ships, this is Morrison. Remember your training. Hit fast and hit hard, then disappear before they can return fire. Use the terrain to your advantage. Asteroids are your friends. Planetary rings are your shields. Make them chase you into traps. We are not trying to destroy their entire fleet today. We are trying to make them afraid." Captain Beth Williams of the USS Ranger responded first. "Understood, Captain. We have eyes on a Zephyrian patrol group. 6 ships moving through the northern asteroid field. Permission to engage." Jake checked his display. "Granted, make it count and then get out of there." The bridge crew watched their screens as the Ranger appeared on sensors. The human destroyer had been hiding behind a large asteroid, and when the Zephyrian patrol passed by, it struck like a cobra. Missiles streaked through space and slammed into the rear shields of the closest enemy ship. The Zephyrian vessel's shields flickered and died as the EMP warheads detonated. A second volley of conventional missiles hit the unprotected hull, and the enemy ship broke apart in a flash of fire and debris. The other 5 Zephyrian ships immediately turned to pursue the Ranger, but Beth Williams was already moving. Her ship dove deeper into the asteroid field, weaving between spinning rocks with expert precision. The Zephyrian ships were larger and less maneuverable, and within seconds 2 of them collided with asteroids. One ship's bow crumpled like paper while the other spun out of control. The remaining 3 ships continued the chase, but they were flying straight into a minefield. 3 EMP mines detonated simultaneously, and the Zephyrian ships went dark, floating helplessly in space. Beth's voice came through the communication channel, sounding triumphant. Scratch 6 enemy vessels. No damage to the Ranger. We are returning to our hiding position. Jake allowed himself a satisfied smile. Well done, Ranger. All other ships, you saw how it is done. Now it is your turn. Over the next hour, similar engagements happened across the system. Human ships would appear from hiding spots, strike fast, and vanish before the Zephyrians could respond effectively. Captain Tony Martinez of the USS Vanguard led a group of 3 destroyers in a coordinated attack against a supply convoy. The human ships came from 3 different directions at once, overwhelming the escort ships and destroying half the convoy before disappearing into a nearby gas cloud. The Zephyrians sent reinforcements, but by the time they arrived, the human ships were long gone. Alex was coordinating the attacks from the Defiance, and he was impressed by how well the strategy was working. Captain, we have confirmed kills on 42 enemy ships and probable kills on another 18. Our losses so far are 0. Jake nodded but remained focused. Do not get overconfident. They still outnumber us 6-1, and eventually they will figure out what we are doing. We need to keep them confused and angry. Nina interrupted. Sir, I am intercepting Zephyrian communications. They are reporting to General Vexithara that they are being attacked by ghost ships. Some of them sound genuinely frightened. Jake felt a surge of satisfaction because fear was a weapon just as deadly as missiles. Patch me through to their command frequency. Nina worked her console and nodded when the channel was open. General Vexithara, this is Captain Morrison. I hope you are enjoying your tour of our system. I have noticed you seem to have lost a few ships. Perhaps you should have brought more targets. Jake cut the channel before the general could respond. Pete was grinning. You are really making him angry, Captain. Jake shrugged. Angry enemies make mistakes, and we need them to make as many mistakes as possible. The tactical display showed the Zephyrian fleet beginning to change formation. Instead of staying in tight groups, they were spreading out to search more effectively. Jake recognized this as both an opportunity and a danger. They were adapting faster than he had hoped, but they were also dividing their forces, which made them more vulnerable. He opened channels to all human ships. New orders. Target their isolated groups. Use the twin suns to blind their sensors during attack runs. Plant false sensor readings to make them think we have more ships than we do. Commander Turner, I need you to reprogram our torpedo guidance systems. Alex looked up. What modifications, sir? Jake pointed at the holographic image of a Zephyrian ship. Dr. Park identified weak points in their armor at the joint connections between plates. I want every torpedo we fire to hit exactly those spots. Alex's fingers flew across his console. It will take me 30 minutes to reprogram the targeting systems, but once I am done, our kill rate should triple. Jake nodded. Do it. While Alex worked, Jake studied the enemy fleet movements and tried to think like General Vexit. 3 days had passed since the battle began, and the Kepler 442 system had become a nightmare for the Zephyrian Empire. General Vexithera stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, staring at the tactical display with growing rage. His fleet had lost 197 ships to these insignificant humans, and he still could not pin down their main force. Every time his warriors found a human vessel, it would strike like lightning and vanish like smoke. His officers stood around him in nervous silence because nobody wanted to be the one to deliver more bad news. The general's forearms clenched into fists as another report came in of 3 more ships disabled by invisible mines. Back on the USS Defiance, Jake Morrison was drinking his 5th cup of coffee in as many hours. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his mind was sharp and focused. The human crew had been rotating shifts to stay fresh, but Jake had barely left the bridge since the fighting started. Alex looked concerned about his captain, but knew better than to suggest he rest. Commander Turner had successfully reprogrammed the torpedo guidance systems, and the results had been devastating. Human missiles were now hitting Zephyrian ships with surgical precision, striking at the weak points between armor plates and causing catastrophic damage with every hit. Nina was monitoring enemy communications, and what she was hearing made her smile. Captain, the Zephyrians are starting to panic. I am picking up multiple distress calls, and some of their junior officers are questioning General Vexithera's orders. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What kind of questions? Nina played back a recorded transmission. One captain is asking why they continue to chase ghosts instead of regrouping. Another is reporting that his crew is exhausted and requesting permission to withdraw for rest. The general is denying all requests and ordering them to press forward. Jake nodded slowly. Their rigid hierarchy is becoming a weakness. Keep monitoring those channels and let me know if any ships actually disobey orders. Captain Tony Martinez contacted the Defiance with an update. Morrison, we just pulled off something beautiful. We used the gravitational pull of the inner planet to slingshot around and come up behind a Zephyrian battle group. They never saw us coming. Hit them with everything we had, and 3 of their cruisers are now floating debris. Jake congratulated him. Well done, Vanguard. Any damage to your ship? Tony laughed. Not a scratch, Captain. These aliens might be strong, but they are slower than frozen molasses. We are heading back to hiding position Delta 7. Stay safe out there. Pete Collins emerged from the engine room covered in grease and holding a data pad. Captain, I've been analyzing the debris from destroyed Zephyrian ships and I found something interesting. Jake turned to face his engineer. What did you find? Pete pulled up schematics on the main view screen. Their power systems are incredibly inefficient. They generate massive amounts of energy, but waste about 40% of it as heat. That is why their ships glow so bright on thermal sensors. More importantly, their cooling systems are external, which means if we hit them in the right spots, we can cause thermal overload. Jake studied the diagrams. Show me these spots. Pete highlighted several points on the Zephyrian ship designs. Here, here, and here. One good hit to any of these cooling vents and their reactor will start cooking them from the inside. They would have maybe 5 minutes to shut down before the whole ship explodes. Jake immediately opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Morrison. New targeting priority. Chief Collins is sending you updated tactical data. Aim for the cooling vents on enemy vessels. Let us turn their own power against them. Within minutes, human ships across the system began using this new information, and the kill rate jumped even higher. Dr. Helen Park had been working on another project in the science lab. She entered the bridge carrying a small device that looked like a modified communicator. Captain, I think I have something that will help with our psychological warfare. Jake raised an eyebrow. I am listening. Helen activated the device and suddenly the bridge speakers began playing a recording of Zephyrian communications, mixed with human music. The effect was jarring and unsettling. I have created a program that broadcasts scrambled messages on their frequencies. It mixes their own voices with recordings of human culture, battle cries, poetry, music, and even laughter. The Zephyrians find human culture fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. This should confuse and demoralize them even further. Jake grinned. Deploy it immediately. Helen nodded, and within minutes all 50 human ships were broadcasting the psychological warfare program. The effect on the Zephyrian fleet was immediate and dramatic. Alien crews began reporting hearing voices in their communications. Some claimed the humans were using psychic attacks. Others believed they were facing demons rather than mortal enemies. General Vexthara tried to order his ships to ignore the broadcasts, but the damage to morale was already done. Warriors who had expected glorious combat were instead fighting an enemy they could not understand and could barely see. Commander Alex Turner was monitoring the tactical situation when he noticed something important. Captain, the Zephyrian fleet is starting to fragment. Instead of coordinated movements, they are acting independently. Some groups are being aggressive while others are hanging back. Jake recognized this as a critical moment. They are losing cohesion. Vexthara is losing control of his forces. This is exactly what we wanted. He opened channels to his most trusted captains. Beth, Tony, this is Morrison. I need you to lead your groups on a special mission. There is a cluster of Zephyrian support ships in Sector 9. They are carrying fuel and supplies for the main fleet. If we can destroy those ships, we can force the enemy to retreat. Captain Beth Williams responded immediately. We see them on our scanners. 12 support vessels with minimal escort. We can take them. Jake checked the tactical display one more time. Be careful. This might be a trap. If it looks wrong, pull back immediately. Beth acknowledged and her task force moved into position. Jake watched nervously as the human ships approached their target. The Zephyrian support convoy was exactly where intelligence said it would be, with only 6 escort ships protecting it. Beth's destroyers came in from multiple angles, overwhelming the escorts with concentrated fire. The EMP mines had been cleared from this sector, so Beth had to rely on conventional weapons, but human accuracy made up for it. The escort ships tried to fight back, but they were outmaneuvered at every turn. Human pilots flew their ships like they were extensions of their own bodies, dodging energy beams and returning fire with deadly precision. Within 10 minutes, all 6 escorts were destroyed, and the support ships were defenseless. Beth gave the order and missiles streaked toward the supply vessels. The explosions were spectacular as fuel and ammunition detonated in chain reactions. Jake watched the tactical display as 12 red dots vanished from the screen. Excellent work, Ranger Group. That will hurt their operational capacity significantly. General Vexithara received the news of the destroyed supply convoy, and something inside him finally snapped. He had been patient and methodical for 3 days, but patience was not bringing him victory. He grabbed the nearest communication officer and roared into the microphone. "All ships, this is General Vexithara. Enough of this cowardly hiding. I challenge the human commander to face me in honorable combat. Ship-to-ship battle. Prove that your species has courage or admit you are nothing but scurrying insects." The transmission was broadcast across all frequencies and every human ship heard it. Nina looked at Jake with concern. "Captain, he is trying to bait you into a direct engagement." Jake nodded. "I know. It is a desperate move, which means we are winning." He activated his own communication channel. "General Vexthera, this is Captain Morrison. I appreciate the invitation, but I must decline. You see, honor is a luxury that the losing side offers when they realize they cannot win through strength alone. My job is not to satisfy your cultural expectations. My job is to protect human colonies, and right now I am doing that quite effectively. Perhaps if you had brought 2 million soldiers, you might have had better luck." The insult was calculated and devastating. Across the Zephyrian fleet, warriors heard their general being mocked by a human, and their morale dropped even further. Vexithara's rage was now beyond control. He began issuing wild orders, demanding his ships charge forward and engage any human vessel they could find regardless of tactical position. Some captains obeyed immediately, but others hesitated. This hesitation created confusion in the ranks, and human forces exploited it ruthlessly. Ships that charged forward blindly flew into minefields or ambushes. Ships that hesitated became isolated and vulnerable to hit-and-run attacks. Jake saw the enemy fleet falling apart and knew it was time to increase the pressure. All ships focus fire on isolated groups. Do not give them time to regroup or reorganize. We have them on the defensive now. Keep pushing. The next 6 hours were brutal for the Zephyrian Empire. Human ships struck from every direction using tactics that seemed to change minute by minute. They used the system's twin suns to blind sensors during attack runs. They hid in planetary rings and gas clouds. They even projected holographic images of destroyed ships, making the battlefield appear more chaotic than it actually was. By the end of the 3rd day, the Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to just over 600. Jake Morrison woke up after only 4 hours of sleep, but he felt more alert than he had in days. Something had changed in the battle, and he could feel it in his bones. He quickly dressed and returned to the bridge where Alex was coordinating attacks with the other human ships. The commander looked up when his captain entered. "Sir, you should see this. The Zephyrian fleet is attempting to regroup near the gas giant. They are pulling back from their scattered positions and forming a defensive perimeter." Jake studied the tactical display and saw that Alex was right. The enemy ships were consolidating their forces for the first time since the battle began. Nina was listening to intercepted communications, and her expression was troubled. "Captain, I am hearing something strange. General Vexithara is ordering all ships to converge on a specific set of coordinates. He is telling his captains that he has identified the human supply convoy and plans to destroy it in one massive assault." Jake felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "Do we have a supply convoy in that area?" Pete checked his logistics reports and shook his head. "Negative, Captain. Our supply ships are nowhere near those coordinates." Jake's mind raced. Then what does he think he is attacking? Alex pulled up sensor data. "Sir, there are 3 freighters in that sector. But according to our records, they are civilian vessels converted for military transport. They have been sitting there since before the battle started." Jake suddenly realized what was happening, and a smile spread across his face. "Those are not regular supply ships. I ordered them there myself 5 days ago. Admiral Carter sent us special equipment and personnel for exactly this kind of situation." Alex looked confused. "What kind of equipment?" Jake opened a secure channel. "Major Kelly Evans, this is Captain Morrison. The bait has been taken. Are you and your team ready?" A woman's voice came through the speaker, sounding calm and confident. "We have been ready for 3 days, Captain. These Zephyrians have no idea what they are flying into." Just give us the signal and we will show them what human special forces can do. Jake turned to his crew. Here is what is going to happen. General Vexithara thinks he has finally found a way to hurt us. He is gathering his remaining 600 ships for one concentrated attack on what he believes is our vulnerable supply line. What he does not know is that those freighters are crewed by Major Evans and her special operations team. Those ships are loaded with experimental weapons and enough firepower to take out a small fleet. We are going to use his desperation against him. Alex understood immediately. You want to trap the entire Zephyrian fleet in one location? Jake nodded. Exactly, and once they commit to the attack, we hit them from all sides. This is our chance to end the battle in one decisive engagement. Jake opened channels to all human ships. All vessels, this is Morrison. The enemy is planning a major assault on our position in Sector 12. I want every ship to move into ambush positions around that sector. Stay hidden until I give the signal. Use the rings of the gas giant as cover. When the Zephyrians commit their forces, we are going to surround them and finish this fight. The response from his captains was immediate and enthusiastic. Captain Beth Williams reported that the Ranger group was moving into position. Captain Tony Martinez confirmed that the Vanguard squadron was ready. One by one, all 50 human ships repositioned themselves around the gas giant, Kepler 442b, creating a massive trap. The gas giant was a beautiful blue and white sphere with spectacular ring systems made of ice and rock particles. The rings were dense enough to hide entire fleets, and the gravitational forces were tricky to navigate. Jake knew that human pilots had trained extensively in similar environments, but the Zephyrians had no such experience. Pete was working on something at his engineering station, and when Jake asked what he was doing, the chief engineer grinned. Captain, I am preparing a little surprise. Remember those gravity generators we installed last month for mining operations? I am going to use them to disrupt the orbital mechanics of the ring system. If I time it right, we can turn those ice particles into the biggest shotgun blast in history. Jake approved the plan immediately. How long until you can activate them? Pete checked his calculations. I need 30 minutes to position them correctly and synchronize their fields. Once activated, the rings will become completely unstable for about 2 hours. Anything caught in that chaos is going to have a very bad day. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Zephyrian fleet. We have time. Get it done. Pete rushed back to his station and began coordinating with the engineering teams on the other human ships. Dr. Helen Park was also preparing her own contribution. She had modified the psychological warfare broadcast to include recordings of human laughter and victory songs. When the Zephyrians realized they had been tricked, she wanted them to hear humanity, celebrating their defeat. General Vexithara stood on his flagship bridge watching his fleet assemble for what he believed would be the decisive battle. His warriors had suffered terrible losses, but now they had a clear target. The human supply convoy represented everything keeping the enemy fleet operational. Destroy those ships and the humans would have no choice but to retreat or surrender. His tactical officer reported that all 600 remaining ships were in position and ready to attack. The general raised one of his forearms and gave the order, all ships forward. Destroy the human convoy and leave nothing but debris. The Zephyrian armada began moving toward Sector 12 in a massive formation that blocked out the stars. Major Kelly Evans watched the enemy fleet approaching on her sensors. She was 40 years old with short blonde hair and scars that told stories of a dozen covert operations. Her team consisted of 50 Special Forces soldiers who had volunteered for this extremely dangerous mission. The 3 freighters they crewed looked helpless and vulnerable, but appearances were deceiving. Each ship was packed with experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Kelly opened a channel to her team. Listen up, people. We have 600 very angry aliens heading our way. Our job is to hold their attention for exactly 10 minutes. That is how long Captain Morrison needs to spring his trap. Make every second count, and remember, we are not trying to win this fight alone. We just need to survive long enough for the cavalry to arrive. The Zephyrian fleet entered the sector and immediately opened fire on the 3 freighters. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space toward the seemingly defenseless human ships. Kelly gave the order and her team activated the defensive systems. Powerful shields flared to life around the freighters, absorbing the first wave of attacks. The Zephyrians were shocked when their weapons failed to destroy the targets instantly. Kelly launched her counterattack. The freighters opened hidden weapon bays and unleashed a devastating barrage of railgun fire and experimental plasma weapons. The weapons hit with such force that the lead Zephyrian ship simply disintegrated. General Vexithera realized too late that he had been tricked. These were not supply ships. They were warships disguised as easy targets. He tried to order his fleet to pull back, but they were already committed to the attack. His ships were packed tightly together in attack formation with no room to maneuver. That was when Jake Morrison sprang his trap. All human ships emerged from hiding in the rings of the gas giant. 50 vessels appeared simultaneously surrounding the Zephyrian fleet on all sides. Jake's voice broadcast across all frequencies. General Vexithera, I believe you wanted a decisive battle. Congratulations, you found one. Pete Collins activated the gravity generators at that exact moment. The carefully balanced orbital mechanics of the ring system suddenly went chaotic. Millions of ice and rock particles that had been orbiting peacefully for millions of years began moving in random, unpredictable patterns. The rings became a three-dimensional storm of deadly projectiles traveling at orbital velocities. Zephyrian ships caught in the chaos had their shields battered by constant impacts. Their tight formation became a death trap, as ships collided with each other trying to avoid the debris. Human ships with their smaller size and superior maneuverability danced through the storm like they were born in it. Commander Alex Turner coordinated the human attack with precision. All ships target the cooling vents like we practiced. Make every shot count. Human missiles and energy beams lanced through the chaos, striking at the vulnerable points on Zephyrian vessels. Ships that had survived 3 days of guerrilla warfare now found themselves unable to escape or fight effectively. Their powerful weapons were useless because they could not get clear shots through the swirling debris. Their heavy armor meant nothing when ice chunks the size of buildings were smashing into them at thousands of meters per second. The battle turned into a slaughter. Captain Beth Williams led her destroyer group in a devastating attack run through the heart of the enemy formation. The Ranger and her escorts moved in perfect coordination, using the debris as cover and striking from unexpected angles. Tony Martinez brought the Vanguard group up from below, catching a dozen Zephyrian ships in a crossfire they could not escape. All across the battlefield, human crews performed with skill and courage that would be remembered for generations. They had trained for years for moments like this, and now they were showing the galaxy what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. General V. General Vexithera's voice came through the communication channel, and for the first time it lacked the arrogance and fury that had defined him. Captain Morrison, I am requesting a ceasefire. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance surrounded by his crew, and did not answer immediately. He looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of red dots either destroyed or disabled. The Zephyrian fleet that had entered this system with 1 million soldiers now had fewer than 300,000 survivors. Nina looked at her captain, waiting for orders. Alex kept his weapons locked on enemy targets, ready to fire if this was some kind of trick. Pete monitored the gravity generators, making sure the ring system remained chaotic enough to prevent any escape attempts. Jake finally activated his microphone. General, you brought an invasion force to destroy human colonies, and now you want mercy. Give me one reason why I should not finish what we started. There was a long pause before Vexithera responded. Because I have learned something today that I did not know before. Humanity is not weak. Your tactics are not cowardly. They are brilliant. I have conquered 17 species, and not one of them taught me the lessons you have taught me in 3 days. If you destroy my fleet now, you will have won a battle. But if you allow us to surrender, you might win something far more valuable. Jake raised an eyebrow. What would that be? The general's voice carried a weight of sincerity. Peace between our peoples and an ally who will never underestimate humanity again. Jake considered the offer carefully. He could order his ships to continue the attack and wipe out what remained of the Zephyrian fleet. It would be a complete victory that would send a message across the galaxy. But it would also make the Zephyrian Empire a permanent enemy, and there would be more battles and more deaths in the future. Alternatively, he could accept the surrender and potentially turn an enemy into something else. He looked at his crew and saw that they were waiting for his decision. Alex spoke quietly. Captain, whatever you decide, we will support you. Nina nodded in agreement. Pete just gave a thumbs up. Jake opened the channel again. General Vexithera, here are my terms. Your fleet will power down all weapons immediately. You will transmit full tactical data on your ships and forces. Your warriors will remain in their vessels while we secure the area. Any ship that attempts to flee or attacks will be destroyed without warning. If you agree to these terms, I will accept your surrender. The general responded almost immediately. I agree to your terms. Transmitting tactical data now. All ships are ordered to stand down. Jake nodded to Nina, who verified that the data was coming through and that Zephyrian ships were indeed powering down their weapons. The battle was over. The next few hours were tense as human ships moved through the debris field, securing the surrendered Zephyrian vessels. Major Kelly Evans and her Special Forces team boarded several enemy ships to ensure compliance with the surrender terms. The Zephyrians were cooperative and seemed almost relieved that the fighting had ended. Jake ordered medical supplies sent to enemy ships that had wounded crew members. Some of his officers questioned this decision, but Jake explained, "We fought them as enemies, but now they have surrendered. How we treat them now will determine what kind of relationship we have going forward. Besides, it costs us nothing to show basic decency." Admiral Lisa Carter contacted the Defiance and her holographic image appeared on the bridge. "Captain Morrison, I have been monitoring the battle from command. What you accomplished here is nothing short of miraculous. 50 ships against 300 and you not only survived but won decisively." Jake felt exhausted now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "We had good people and a good plan, Admiral." Lisa smiled. "You had more than that. You had the courage to fight a battle no one thought you could win. The Zephyrian Empire has already contacted our diplomatic corps, requesting formal peace negotiations. They want you to be part of those negotiations." Jake was surprised. "Why me?" Lisa's expression became serious. "Because you are the human who defeated General Vexthara. In their culture, that gives you immense status and respect." 3 days later, Jake found himself aboard a neutral space station meeting with General Vexthara, face-to-face for the first time. The Zephyrian commander was even more imposing in person, standing 8 feet tall with his forearms and armored body. But his eyes showed intelligence and something Jake had not expected to see. Respect. The general bowed slightly, which Jake understood was a significant gesture in Zephyrian culture. "Captain Morrison, I have spent the last 3 days reviewing everything that happened in the battle. I have studied your tactics and your decisions. I must tell you that in all my years of warfare I have never been so completely outmaneuvered." Jake nodded. "You fought with honor, General, but honor alone does not win battles. Strategy, adaptability, and understanding your enemy are just as important." Vexthara's mandibles clicked in what Jake realized was the Zephyrian equivalent of a bitter laugh. "My empire has conquered 17 species because we believed our way of warfare was superior. You have shown me that there are many ways to fight and that rigidity is a fatal weakness." The general pulled up a holographic display showing the battle. "Here is where I made my first mistake. I assumed you would fight us directly because that is what every other species did. You instead vanished and struck from shadows. Here is my second mistake. I divided my forces to search for you, making them vulnerable to your ambushes. And here is my final and greatest mistake. I allowed my anger to cloud my judgment and walked into a trap that I should have seen coming." Jake studied the display and felt a strange kinship with this alien warrior. "General, you are being too hard on yourself. You were fighting an enemy using tactics your culture had never encountered. The fact that you recognized your mistakes and chose surrender over pointless death shows wisdom." Vexthara looked at Jake directly. "In my culture, to surrender is considered the greatest shame. But I realized that destroying what remained of my fleet would serve no purpose except satisfying my pride. My warriors deserved a chance to survive and learn from this defeat." Jake extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. That decision took more courage than continuing to fight. The general carefully took Jake's hand with one of his 4 hands, and they shook. The formal peace treaty was signed 2 weeks later aboard the same neutral station. The Zephyrian Empire agreed to recognize all human territorial claims and establish trade agreements that would benefit both civilizations. General Vexthara personally advocated to his government that humanity should be treated as equals rather than potential conquests. Some in the Empire resisted this idea, but Vexthara's reputation and the devastating defeat of his invasion force convinced most that the humans were not to be underestimated. Jake represented humanity at the signing ceremony, and when reporters asked him how he felt about the victory, he gave a thoughtful answer. "I feel relief that we can end the killing and begin building something positive. War should always be the last option, not the first." Jake returned to Earth 3 months later and was promoted to Admiral by the Terran Defense Force. His victory had made him famous across human space, and other alien civilizations were taking notice. Humanity was no longer seen as a minor species on the galactic stage. Admiral Carter assigned Jake to a new position training other human officers in unconventional warfare tactics. He spent his days teaching the next generation of leaders how to think creatively and adapt to any situation. Many of his former crew members became instructors as well. Alex Turner taught tactical coordination. Nina Rodriguez specialized in communications and intelligence gathering. Pete Collins trained engineers in creative problem-solving. General Vexithera surprisingly became an advocate for peaceful relations with other species. He traveled throughout the Zephyrian Empire, giving lectures on the dangers of cultural arrogance and the importance of adapting to new threats. His talks always included detailed analysis of his defeat at human hands, and he never tried to minimize or excuse his mistakes. Young Zephyrian warriors initially viewed him as a failure, but over time they came to respect his honesty and wisdom. The general wrote a military treatise titled The Human Way of War that became required reading in Zephyrian military academies. In it, he argued that true strength came not from tradition or overwhelming force, but from the ability to learn and change. 5 years after the battle, Jake received an unexpected visitor at his office on Earth. General Vexithara had requested a private meeting, and Jake agreed out of curiosity. The alien warrior entered the office, and Jake noticed he seemed older somehow, despite Zephyrians aging more slowly than humans. They sat across from each other and talked not as former enemies but as old soldiers who had shared something profound. Vexithara explained that he was retiring from active military service to focus on diplomatic work. "I have spent my entire life as a warrior, but you taught me that there are more important things than conquest. I want to spend my remaining years building bridges between species instead of burning them." Jake listened and felt genuine admiration for the alien's transformation. "What will you do?" Vexithara's mandibles moved in what Jake now recognized as a smile. "I am going to establish a school, a place where military officers from different species can learn from each other. I want to teach